In the Jisho Era 3 in Kyoto, a monster slowly starts being created before a boy instantly defeats it using his Scarlet Sky explosion before suddenly questioning what this unpleasant feeling is. He turns to see a group of people, one of whom says they successfully fooled him. He was led to this place by the onmyoji of Tsuchimi Kato family. He asks if he's wondering about the number of people and remarks that they will kill him here. All of them simultaneously use their seals to summon spiritual power restraint, after which the boy says his Shikigami summoning has been sealed. Spiritual power that can be released has been limited too. He inwardly tells them to not fail now since they really are prepared to such an extent. The man tells him to enjoy while he lasts. It's the only time he'll be able to afford it since he dies here today. The boy questions if he can ask why they're killing him today, to which the man replies that the reason is plain and simple. He's too strong. He who can single-handedly subjugate evil spirits of rivers and mountains, that skill is nothing but a hindrance to the Tsuchimi family, to which he answers that means he frightened them before all the people jump on him at once as the man orders them to kill him. The boy remarks that his strongest Shikigami has been sealed and his spiritual techniques have been restrained, as expected even if it's him. To go against the elite of more than 100 onmyojis, he can't beat them, but he'll keep fighting till the end. He menacingly tells them to bring it on so that he can beat them at their own game. As the man wearily looks at the fallen people around him and at the boy, he wearily says they've restrained his techniques and sealed his strongest Shikigami, so to what extent is he going to endure? The boy wonders if it really is that difficult to survive through the situation he's currently in and says this is the only way he has left. He remarks that he feels like he's a little lost, but this is his last resort. He uses the circle of transmigration, steam which the man calls it the forbidden arts, and panic and wonders since when he had this much spiritual power, as the boy remarks that this life wasn't so bad and decides to do better next time. As he wakes up in a bed, he feels his body and appearance and excitedly says this means the reincarnation was a success before suddenly doubling over in pain as the memories of this person flow into his head. He says this world has magic and his situation in this world doesn't seem that good too. His name is Wayne Granado, the Granado family's third son. The admission exam for the Arcella Academy of Magic is coming up, but no one seems to believe he'll pass because of his bad reputation for having no talent in magic, which is troubling. In this world, spiritual power hasn't been discovered yet, which is probably why he reincarnated into Wayne's body. He remarks that there are parts of his memory that are vague, so he should read up to get a little more understanding of the current situation. Later, as he closes the book, he admits this isn't the world he knows. The culture and ecosystem are completely different, and the demon beasts specifically are particularly dangerous and are like Ayakashi and Mononoke from his past world. Even in Granado territory, there are many people who get attacked by these beasts every year, so magic is a way to fight these beasts and is quite popular, which is why no one seems to know the existence of spiritual power or techniques. In his previous life, he didn't want attention, so he protected people by working in the dark, but he was eliminated because of that, which is why he'll make it flashy time, not in the dark, but in the spotlight. Suddenly, his bully elder brothers, Dean and Harold, barge in. Dean says he doesn't understand why their father left him the estate, to which he inwardly remarks he's the only one who does, remembering how his father had said he's leaving him the estate because it needs wisdom, not power. In present day, Wayne tells them that he'll take over the family after he's expelled his brothers and makes a bet with them before remarking that you should start by reviving them. Wayne says he'll be the Onmyo starting now and explains that Onmyo is activated by reciting mantra, consuming its own spiritual power as a catalyst. It's very similar to the magic that people in the world consume when activating their own magical power, but Wayne doesn't have any mana. Instead, his body is abundant with spiritual power, so perhaps the connection is placed at opposite poles like yin and yang. He wonders which Onmyo he should use before a voice asks if he's hesitating. Addressing him as Master Wayne, he recognizes that voice and asks if it's Kijin, so it replies that it is and has been waiting for him to wake up. He says he knew these guys would also be here. It replies that he's the only master who can handle them and says the 12 Shikigami generals are also in good health, which Wayne remarks that's why the chief Shikigami decided to speak to him, which the voice agrees to and says it'll still serve him. Even if reincarnated, he says it's right on time since he's testing Onmyo before activating his powers and summoning the 12 Shikigami generals, explaining that they're the highest rank among Shikigami and are his strongest subordinates, in other words. As the 12 generals appear around him, he remarks that it seems like Onmyo can be used here as well, and Shikigami can be easily summoned before 9 of the 12 generals disappear, after which he notes that it seems like 12 is too much for his new body at its current level. The ones who are left are Kijin, Suzaku, and Diane only. The three immediately get on their knees in front of him as Kijin says it's been a while. Suzaku adds that he's glad he's awakened, and Diane remarks that he's cuter than before and has become a pretty boy before being reprimanded by Kijin, who says that's rude. Wayne says he's glad no one's changed before Kijin asks why them three specifically are the ones left. Dayan says maybe it's because they're the chosen ones among the 12 generals, but Wayne tells her that it's just a coincidence. But when he gets a little more spiritual power, he'll summon them all and let them do whatever they want, so they should please be patient until then, hearing which Kijin says they're honored by his kind words, and the other Shikigami are happy as well. She says the admission test for him to be the head of the family is coming up, which he agrees to and says that's where they start, while Dayan and Suzaku angrily remark that they want to get back at them quickly and send them flying, but he answers that they'll get back at them soon, and besides, he isn't enrolling to the academy just to get passing marks, which brightens them all up as they start praising him. Kijin asks if those two brothers will kindly accept getting expelled once he's passed the exams, to which he answers they'll definitely retaliate, but it won't be a big deal, because once he enters the academy, he has to get rid of his image of being a dropout who can't use magic, which Kijin gloomily agrees is true since the people around him don't seem to have a high opinion of him. But he asks if the opinion of those people is really important. In his past life, he reigned strongest in Onmyo of Gutsu, but that's where things went wrong. He didn't like the spotlight, so he did things out of the public view, which is why his respect from the Tsuchimi family fell to the ground, since he moved freely without being under a faction. This time, he will become the strongest that everyone recognizes, so he's aiming for the strongest ruler with comrades who will never rebel again. Everyone agrees that's a good idea, so he tells Kijin to take the test with him since it'll be reassuring to have a collaborator by his side. Dayan asks why it gets to be her, so he answers that it's because she's the most intelligent out of them all. Suzaku asks if she'll be fine relearning everything from scratch, so Wayne answers that it's fine. Shikigami don't need sleep, so she should be able to understand everything in 3 days' time. Once that's done, he asks them to go back to keep Kijin summoned before telling her to hang in there. As the maid goes to clean Wayne's room, she sees a book and quill hovering in midair and starts screaming. Later, Kijin says even if it's a fuss doing things this way, it can't be helped while using the transparency on Myojutsu. On the day of the entrance exam, as Wayne and Kijin are traveling from the Granite of Territory to the royal capital, Arsala, he remarks that floating pen and papers had become a regular rumor at the mansion, but he didn't mind it that much, suddenly feeling a large demon blast 3 kilometers ahead of them. Kijin asks if he wants her to dispose of it, but he says it's fine and tells her to continue studying before using spatial transfer and appearing somewhere else. He explains that before the entrance exam, he had deepened his understanding of magic and mana. The mana in his body is almost zero, but because of that, he can now recognize the mana present in living things to a certain extent. The class, a demon beast, Chimera, appears in front of him, so he asks if that's how it sniffs out its prey and remarks that it can right on time. As the beast lunges at him, he uses his spiral raging flames and burns it to ashes before asking if that's it. As he returns to the cart, Kijin asks how it was so. He answers that the mana reaction surrounding the demon beast was much bigger, but that's it and was disappointing. Kijin says he's as impressive as ever before the cart stops, and the driver says the body of a chimera is lying in front of them and is completely burnt, wondering what kind of great mage could do that, which he agrees with. Later, they arrive at the Arsala Kingdom, where the entrance exam at the Academy of Magic are held equally regardless of anyone's status. There's a huge number of applicants from all around the continent, and only a select few are able to pass. As they enter the academy with Kijin having disabled transparency, a boy mockingly says the dunce who can't even use magic is here and asks if he's trying to embarrass himself before Kijin shoots him a glare, but he stops her and greets the boy, Simon calling him the boy who rides his parents' coattails and won't get any help from them this time, so he should be careful not to embarrass himself. Simon angrily tells Wayne that he's getting ahead of himself and asks if he should cripple him so that he can't even hold a pen, but a girl stops him and says unofficial fights aren't permitted and won't tolerate this, after which he leaves and tells Wayne he's not off the hook yet. She asks Wayne if he's okay, to which he thanks her for her help, remembering how she's Sophie, the Count's eldest daughter of Norbert family, one of the 7 great nobles. She says he shouldn't get provoked since he probably doesn't know of his status, hearing which he starts laughing and agrees. She remarks that his character's changed a bit. He asks what she said, but she says it's her bad and tells him to forget about it before leaving, hearing which he says that's probably true, but for her to be able to tell that, she must be really observant. Kijin says there are a lot of rude people around her and asks if she should get rid of them, but he tells her to not say such things with a serious face, and that this kind of attitude will take a while to end, so she doesn't have to react to them every time. As an announcement says the entrance exam will be held now and asks examiners to move to the venue for instructions. Wayne remarks that the test contains of 3 parts: written, practical, and magic. As they sit down in the class, he tells Kijin that he'll tell her the answer once the exam is over so that she can match it up. Hearing this, she asks if she didn't need to study at all. He answers that she doesn't need to worry about that, which she slowly agrees to, so he says he'll tell her the answers, but she'll have to work out the questions properly by herself, which she understands as the examiner asks them to please begin the written test. As Wayne starts the written exam, he remarks that it looks like it's about the general understanding of magic. Wayne excels in magical theory, but he lacks understanding, which is why there are also questions that lean more towards the technical side, which he wouldn't have been able to answer. Luckily, the main focus of the written exam is still about magical theory. As long as he answers those correctly, this written exam shouldn't be a problem. At the end, he tells Kijin that he corrected her wrong answers, so she should be fine as well, to which she apologizes. But he says it's fine since she did well for a 3-day course, before telling her to keep her Onmyo Jutsu a secret since the chanting exam is next, which she enthusiastically agrees to and says she will live up to his expectations. He answers that he expects a lot from her in that case. The goal of the chanting exam is rather simple. The applicants are just supposed to fire their best attacks at a target. Wayne remarks that the applicants don't seem to be good, so he'll have to limit his spiritual power even more than what he already decided to. Simon tells him that now is the time if he intends to back out and can't even use any magic, but he answers that he shouldn't assume that he's the same as before or that teasing of his will turn deadly. As Simon's turn comes up, he says he's going to show him what he's got, but Kijin remarks that he'll be the one who does the scene today, so Wayne tells her to not worry about it since the difference between them will become apparent soon enough, and to take care to not overdo it and try to keep her power level near what he does, which she agrees to. As Simon performs his magic, Wayne remarks that he's really full of himself even with that little precision and power. If he had been up first, he would have definitely overdone it. As Wayne heads forward for his turn, Simon mockingly asks if he saw the difference in their skills, but he silently steps forward and remarks that unlike magic, he can't use Onmyo Jutsu without his paper dolls, but all he needs to do is use them without letting anyone see it, by limiting his power to be only a bit more powerful than Simon's. He'll even deliver a fake short chant that should score him some points. He uses his fireball and completely destroys the target, shocking everyone as he inwardly remarks that he still has a lot to learn when it comes to controlling his spiritual power. Simon angrily says he cheated since someone like him who doesn't have any magic can't use such a powerful spell, which everyone around them agrees and wonder how he could have used such a strong spell. The teacher silences them all and says whether he cheated or not will be decided by the academy and calls Kijin forward. Simon says he bet he got through with some dirty cheating in the chanting exam, but that won't work in the practical exams. Wayne is about to talk about what he'll do in that case, but is suddenly interrupted when Kijin also blasts away the target, telling Wayne that she matched with his power level, just like he ordered her to, seeing which Wayne remarks that he should have corrected her. The practical exam consists of a duel between applicants. The time limit is 3 minutes and every contestant will have to fight once, and so they needed to demonstrate their skills in that match. It's also said that the outcome of the match has no bearing towards the examination. The teacher announces the match between Simon and Wayne, who says he's on the side to expose him after all because no matter what he does, no one will believe him, but even if he managed to cheat his way through the exam, he'll still be publicly humiliated by him, but Wayne says he doesn't think so and doesn't think he'll be able to beat him, to which he angrily says he'll beat him to a pulp in the match. As the match begins, Simon uses an orb to power up his magic, but Wayne instantly blasts it away before saying he should go sleep for a bit. As Simon collapses, the teacher hurriedly announces that Wayne's the winner. As Simon falls down, the teacher says they confirm that he was cheating and will now be disqualified from the exam, while the onlookers worriedly murmur about how he was able to so easily defeat Simon, who was supposed to be the top student so far. As Wayne walks down the stage, Kijin congratulates him for winning and says he's finally shown that insolent guy the difference between the two of them, which he says he did, and that he already told her during the chanting exam and wants to remind her again to not go overboard like he did, which is why she should hold her power back a little, which she enthusiastically agrees on and says he can count on her hearing, which he remarks that she doesn't look that trustworthy right now. Kijin easily defeats her opponent, seeing which he remarks that he knew it would end up like this, and thus the entrance exam ended. Meanwhile, a man reads Wayne's form and says despite having no mana, he used a spell with a chant nobody had ever heard before, and there are no signs of cheating. On the contrary, he identified the cheating of other applicants, calling him an interesting applicant, and guesses that this calls for an interview. 3 days after the entrance exam, Wayne once again comes to Ulsara Magic Academy and wonders why he was the only applicant that got called for a follow-up interview since they didn't even invite Kijin. As he enters the headmaster's office, the man introduces himself as Rollo, which surprises Wayne since he's also the strongest mage in the Ulsara Kingdom who has invented more than 100 spells, and is known as the father of the field of modern magical studies. He's the strongest and greatest mage currently leaving, or at least he's supposed to be, but he can't help but notice a normal old man. As both of them sit down, Rollo apologizes for making him come all the way out here today and says he would just like to ask him a few questions, and that his theory is that what he was using was not magic, seeing which Wayne says he really isn't an ordinary person. It might be difficult to hide Onmyo Jutsu from the strongest mage in existence, but it's not like he was planning to hide it forever anyway, so this might actually be a good chance. He tells Rollo that he's correct because what he used wasn't magic, it was Onmyo-jutsu. Rollo says he's never heard of that before, which he agrees to since he invented it himself. Rollo repeats the fact that he invented it while being so young and says they should move quickly then. He instantly casts a spell and teleports them to the stadium, seeing which Wayne remarks that he teleported 2 people without even chanting. Rollo answers that this much is a piece of cake and asks him to show what he did at the entrance exam, the magic that he called Onmyo-jutsu. Wayne agrees to this, remarking that he at least expected it to go like this, as Rollo says whether he passes or fails depends on what he's able to show him today, hearing which Wayne inwardly says it's like a 4th exam only he has to take, and that he might be the strongest magician of the current age, but he's gotten up there lately. He decides to use Onmyo-jutsu that isn't too powerful, but unleashes a barrier as he's met with a wave of attacks. He asks Rollo what he was trying to do, so he notes the instantaneous barrier he put up and answers that it looked like he wasn't going to show him his best, so he insisted on showing him what he's capable of, telling him to not just take him as an old fool, since he wants to see him at his full power, inwardly remarking that what he just did was Onmyo-jutsu, and is a truly terrifying young man because of being able to defend so well in an instant before wondering how he's going to attack and remarking on how unbecoming of his age he's acting, being so excited over this. Wayne asked Rollo if he's the strongest and greatest magician of the current age, which he agrees to, so he says he's going to show him all he's got, his strongest Onmyo-jutsu, summoning a powerful flame spell called the Ultimate Spirit Flame. Wayne unleashes the fireball on Rollo, who walks out of the smoke with his clothes singed and remarks on how dangerous it was, saying that he was almost unable to dodge it, seeing which he says he's a lot stronger than the Sumichikado exorcists, and that it seems as if this world won't be quite as simple as the previous one. Rollo thinks for a moment and says he thinks he has a good grasp on how strong Wayne is now, which surprised him, so he asks if he passes now, to which he answers that him passing was never a question. Wayne reacts to this with confusion, so he explains that he already passed the exam 3 days ago. He just held this interview because he thought it'd be interesting, and is looking forward to see exactly what he achieves in this academy hearing, which Wayne warily calls him a cunning old geezer. Several days later, Kijin says they finally did it, which he congratulates her for before she says that it was foolish of them to even think of making a bet with him. He answers that they just played by the rules set by them, so he hopes they follow through from now on. He suddenly stops and says they're here before telling Kijin that he's releasing her summon, to which she wishes him luck. As he enters, Harold says he already told him he can't eat with them, which he agrees, but says he thought it would be a good time since both of them are here, and tells them to please take a look, showing them a letter of acceptance. As promised, both of them will leave the Granada family. Dean says that's impossible, but Harold asks what he's going crazy over and says that's definitely a fake, which he agrees to and remarks that there's no way someone as talentless as him could get accepted. Wayne remarks that he never thought it would be easy after all and says he should prove it to them. Then, so they will understand when they see the difference in their powers, Harold rushes at him, calling him a weakling and telling him to know his place, but he effortlessly catches his blade with his fingers, seeing which Harold says he can't move it in shock, but Wayne tells Dean to come at him with full strength as well. Dean angrily tells him to not underestimate him and unleashes his flame magic on him, seeing which Harold says it serves him right with glee, but as the flames clear, they see him standing there without a scratch. Dean asks what's happening before Wayne throws a dagger at the wall and says that would be all because this will serve as the end of his demonstration and will claim his inheritance now that he's passed the test, and both Den and Harold have officially been banished from the Granada family, so he'll give them until tomorrow to pack up their things. Harold hurriedly asks Dean what they should do now, even though they finally killed Father, before asking if he knows how hard it was to swap out his medicine every single time. Dean tells him to shut his mouth and says now that it's come to this, he's going to have to play his trump card, remembering how he'd said he's sure they are 10 platinum coins and asked if he's sure it can kill him, the man who was the silent magician. Zodia had said that he was 100% sure and had told Dean that he could count on him. As Wayne wakes up, Kijin calls his name out, so he says he knows and knew they try something. Looking around the magic ring casted beneath his bed, he said it appears that they have shut him inside a barrier. Looking at the melting bed poles, he remarks that there's magic for assassination as well. He gets up and says they use such a weak technique and should show them how a real assassination is done. Meanwhile, Harold laughs and tells Zodia he's amazing and can't wait to see the cocky weakling writhe in pain. Dean says he's just unlucky, and if he hadn't passed the exam to Alsura, he wouldn't have, but gets interrupted as Harold starts laughing and remarks that he went as far as to kill him. Zodia explains that he filled the inside of the barrier with solvent magic, so there's no way he'd be able to stay calm. They get up and decide to go take a look then, since they need to get plenty of payback for what he did this morning. He cockily asks Dean if right, but he answers that he has no interest in petty revenge, so he's only going because it is his duty as an older brother to go witness his younger brother's final moments. As they walk up the stairs and into the corridor, Zodia puts his hand on the knob and tells them to prepare themselves before he opens the door, because the two of them will witness their younger brother's mangled body, but Harold says they'll be fine and boldly opens the door, wondering how badly the weakling looks, but they enter inside to see that there's no one inside. Zodia shockingly says that's impossible, to which Dean says he told them that his barrier was inescapable. Zodia tries to assure them that it is, and even double the magic circle, so there's no way he could have escaped. Harold asks why he isn't here then, before a voice tells them that he actually is. They whirl around in shock to face a perfectly fine-looking Wayne, who tells them to explain to him what exactly is going on. He explains that he escaped the barrier as soon as it was formed and traced the mana back to them. Harold wonders what he's implying, to which he says that it sure is preposterous to happily walk down the corridor when they're not even aware if their assassination target was dead or not, and asks if they don't think the same. Zodia asks what he just said, so he says he even heard what they were talking about, which was what convinced him that Father was right about the two of them. They are not suited to become lords. Harold angrily calls him a weakling, and Dean quickly tells the assassin to kill him, to which he says that's what he was planning on. Wayne says he really shouldn't let his guard down before he's confirmed whether or not his target is dead, since if he does, it will definitely end with the tables turning on them, as he makes him disappear with his paper seal. Harold and Dean watch him in shock, as he says he doesn't think banishing them out of the family will merely be enough for the two of them anymore, since they've shown it themselves that they wouldn't learn and will just come for him again. Therefore, they'll have to give them a taste of hell so that they can learn their lesson. Harold angrily tells him to not get carried away, but he angrily tells him to shut up, shaking both of them, before Dean says they'll never bother him again and asks for his forgiveness. But he says no thank you. Dean furiously says this would never have gone this far if he had just shut up and listened them, so he tells Tenku to do it, as a monstrous being rises from behind him and faces the two brothers, who start screaming in fear. Wayne explains that Tenku is one of the 12 heavenly generals and specializes in illusions. If his brothers were to ever go near the Granado territory, they would suffer from dreadful visions of monsters attacking them, which is why they should never come back to the Granado territory ever again, and now he's the lord of the Granado territory. He picks up the photo frame of his father on his desk and says he'll make sure to protect the land he loves so much, so he should please try to rest in peace. At the Alcera Magic Academy's opening ceremony, someone announces a greeting from their student representative, Wayne Granado, and asks him to come to the stage. He inwardly remarks that he never thought he'd be the top student and wonders who's behind this, thinking of Rollo, but doesn't matter, because he just has to refrain from making the same mistakes he did in his previous life, which is why he'll take full advantage of this. As he stands in front of the students, they murmur about him, asking if he's the famous dropout and why he came back, before he thanks them for holding such a splendid opening ceremony for them today. So this might be sudden, but he has no mana, so he can't use magic, but he can use something else, something called Omyu-Vetsu, which surprises everyone, as Kijin happily remarks that he finally did it and she's certain he'll now be regarded in a better light. He explains that Omyu-Vetsu makes use of spiritual power rather than mana, and luckily for him, he has a lot of it. So now that he has Omyu-Jutsu, he is certain that he is superior to each and every one of them magicians, pissing off students, as he continues that not only will he prove it in their upcoming school activities, he'll turn the entire world on its head, and hopes they'll forgive him for being so blunt during his greeting, and thanks them for listening to him, hearing which Kijin excitedly says he's amazing, while Rollo watches from behind a door and says he's gone and done it now. A teacher asks him if he's really going to allow such a greeting, to which Rollo answers that it's fine, since all that matters in this academy is ability, and Wayne has enough ability to back that greeting up, to which the teacher says they'll see about that. In class, Wayne notes that his fellow students are avoiding him like a plague, but isn't concerned since it's all a part of the plan after all. Sophie approaches him and asks if he didn't think that greeting of his was very provocative, to which he says it was pretty good. She asks if he's serious and tells him that the whole academy is hating his guts after that speech. Seeing the look of the people watching him, he laughs and says she might be right, but that's what he was going for. She reacts to this with confusion, so he reminds her of what he said in his speech and states that he'll prove his superiority, and with his Omyu-Jutsu, he will stand at the top of Alcera. She becomes alert hearing that and asks since when he developed a new form of magic, so he says he told her it was Omyu-Jutsu and to not mix it up with magic. As far as she's concerned about how he learned it, he bet his life on it. She asks what he means by betting his life and wonders what he's saying before Kijin enters the classroom and says she's back. Wayne notices her and asks about the details, so she excitedly answers that the north and south buildings each have their own separate cafeteria. The northern one is very famous for their freshly baked pie, hearing which he says they should go in that case. Suddenly remembering, he turns to face Sophie, holding out his hand and says he hopes they'll get along from now on, to which she slowly clasps his hand and says, "Me too." As Wayne and Kijun leave, she wonders if that really is him as a moth sits on the window. The moth returns to a man who says it found them, since among all the students in Alcera, they're definitely the ones with the most excellent genes. Looking at a picture of Sophie Norbert, he calls her the one with the awakened genes and cackles, calling it wonderful and remarking that he won't have to fear anything once he gets his hands on her, because even Rollo Vistov won't be able to match the awakened gene, which is why when he has her, he shall rule Alcera. A week after the opening ceremony, the teacher tells the class that they'll be having mock battles to get good understanding of the ability of the sword class and aren't allowed to use magic, meaning their basic skills will be put to the test. They'll give wooden swords to them all, so they should pair up and get started. A girl timidly asks Sophie to please pair up with her, to which she warmly answers that she looks forward to it. As Kijun asks Wayne if he'd like to pair up with her, he answers that he obviously wants to pair up with her, but tells her to wait a moment. After she says they should start immediately, he says he'd like to see Sophie's mock battle first and watches as the two girls start sparring, and she immediately disarms her opponent, which the onlookers praise, commending that this level of performance is expected from the Norbert family, one of the 7 great nobles, and that she's a girl from a family that is famous for producing sword saints generation after generation. Wayne remarks that she's pretty good and tells Wayne they should get started, while the girl partnered up with Sophie excitedly thanks her and says she couldn't land a single hit on her. Sophie thanks her as well and says she has a long way to go compared to Wayne, but the girl says that's not true since she's known as the Sword Princess because everyone knows how skilled she is. Wayne might be the top student, but she's sure she would have defeated him if the entrance exam had a swordsmanship test. Sophie thanks her for the words before turning around to see Wayne and Kijun sparring, seeing which the other students remark that they're on a completely different level. As the two are sparring, Wayne says Kijun's really trying to win before she lands a finishing blow, but he appears from behind her and says they should stop now. Seeing this, she remarks that she really didn't stand a chance, but he answers that she did well and her acting has also improved. She asks if he saw right through her, but he tells her that he didn't notice right until the end and tells her that she doesn't need to raise his standing and should come at him with her full power next time, before Sophie asks him if he could also have a battle with her. He answers that he was also thinking of having a mock battle with her and asks her to please not hold back, which she answers to what she should say. The students excitedly talk about what's going to happen in a mock battle between the top student Wayne and Sophie, who came in second place. As Sophie rushes at him and gets her attack blocked, she remarks that she knew he's different from the Wayne she knows and is using a sword style that doesn't match anyone else from Alcera and is completely unknown. Other than that, there's also the unique technique he calls Onmyo Jutsu and is a mystery, but that's exactly why she's doing this, because just by sparring with swords, she hopes to get to know him a bit better. Wayne remarks that the man inside her is really unstable and she won't improve much if she stays like this, so in that case, he'll try doing that. Dodging an attack, he uses the technique Earth Pillar, seeing which the students say they were prohibited from using magic, while Sophie remarks that this is Onmyo Jutsu, which he agrees to, and says they didn't say anything about not using it. Sophie wonders why he did that so abruptly and if he really wants to win so bad that he'll resort to using these dirty tricks, before Wayne jumps at her from behind and asks what she'll do in this situation. She instantly whips around and tells him to not look down on her, disarming him before wondering what she did just now. Wayne says she did well and admits his loss. She asks if he can't just pick up his sword, so he answers that him using Onmyo Jutsu when magic was prohibited was clearly playing dirty and he broke the rules, so he loses. Suddenly, Sophie feels the mana in her body stabilizing and questions if this is what he was going for, wondering when he noticed it. She thanks him, but he tells her that he didn't do anything she should thank him for and walks off, seeing which she inwardly says she really only understood one thing about him, reminiscing on when they were children. She says he may be stronger than he ever was before, but it seems that the kind and awkward side inside of him is still the same as ever. The students watching angrily talk about Wayne, calling him pathetic for resorting to such dirty means to just defeat someone only to end up losing anyway. Wayne says it's fine and tells Kijun to calm down, as Sophie tells everyone to calm down since Wayne only tried to help her improve, which is why he used Onmyo Jutsu. Sophie's partner from before asks if she isn't misunderstanding, but she says she isn't because his swordsmanship is better than hers, so he could have easily defeated her without using Onmyo Jutsu. She asks Wayne if he's right, to which he answers that he at least thinks he lost in a fair fight, but won't lose next time. Sophie says she looks forward to it, as the onlookers wonder what she meant by using it for her sake, but that means his power is the real deal. Hearing this, his classmates tells Wayne that he's amazing and are seeing him in a whole new light. He later thanks Sophie since his classmates are no longer avoiding him because of her. She says she's glad she could help, although it's really easy to misunderstand things with how he acts. He says he would like to ask about that, and it would also double up as a thanks, before inviting her to his mansion after school for a cup of tea, which she accepts. Near the capital, in the Granado family's villa, Kijin apologizes for making them wait and gives Wayne and Kijin their tea, seeing which Sophie says she didn't know Kijin acted as his servant, so he says it isn't rare for servants to attend Al-Sura, which she agrees to. Once that's done, he asks her what she meant when she said it's easy to misunderstand him, so she answers that, putting it simply, he's a little too confident, which is why his classmates are avoiding him. He admits he'd never thought about it before and inwardly remarks that it might even be related to why the Tsuchimi Cadavers betrayed him in his previous life. He thought it was normal to be confident for oneself and wonders if this means that he should act a bit more humble to not repeat the mistakes he made in his previous life. She tries assuring him and says when the misunderstanding is cleared up, everyone will be able to see that he's actually a really good guy. He says that's probably a subject for another time, so she answers that she could help him out so the class can get used to him if he likes. Surprised, he asks if she'd do that, so she answers that she obviously can since she hasn't yet repaid him for what he did for her during the mock battle and wants to know him better. Hearing this, he thanks her. As she leaves later, he remarks that this makes Sophie his first friend at school. Sophie remarks that it's been a long time since she's had such a nice conversation, since very few people talk to her without keeping her status in mind, which is probably because Wayne is so confident that they can talk like that, so school life might actually be better than what she'd initially thought. She encounters an old lady on the ground and alarmingly asks if she's fine. The lady replied that she thinks she sprained her ankle and asks Sophie to lend her a hand since her house isn't that far from here. Sophie says she can carry her on her back if that's the case and won't burden her ankle that way. The lady deviously thanks her and remarks that it really is a big help, but she's so easy to trick. Sophie whips around but falls unconscious. Kijin enters Wayne's room and tells him that a servant from the Norbert family has arrived, hearing which he wonders if she forgot something. The servant asks if Sophie is at their mansion. He answers that it's been quite a while since she left. She worryingly tells him that she hasn't yet returned home yet and asks him to please inform them if they receive any news of her. He tells her that they'll be first to know and summons Tamo once she's left. He asks if he can look for Sophie for him and remarks that he has a bad feeling about this and hopes that it's just a feeling. Sophie drowsily wakes up and wonders where she is, saying the last thing she remembers is trying to help an old lady. A man remarks he's seen that she's awoken. Sophie asks who they are, so he, woman beside him, says she forgot her own captor. Sophie angrily asks them what they're after, so he tells her to calm down since she might just lose her life if she wastes her energy like that. She's about to ask what he means before he pulls a lever, and she suddenly starts feeling something weird. She asks what he did, to which he asks if it hurts and says he injected her with some highly concentrated mana, which is a key step in extracting her magic gene, before remarking that he said too much and that she should keep quiet if she wants to live a long life. Hearing she says they're Lunatiora. This surprises He-Man, who questions why she knows that name. Sophie adds that their organization's name is Lunatiora and are rebels that regard nobles as sworn enemies. She asks if she's right. He says it seems like they've grown famous enough for the 7 great noble families to acknowledge them, and asks her to allow him to tell her something on this special occasion. The goal of their organization is that they want to shake this rotten world where birth determines your status. Created by the nobles, he says he'll grant everyone the same level of power, no matter their bloodline, based on their gene. He will create a drug that will drastically improve one's mana. As long as one holds the drug, anyone and everyone will be able to be happy, regardless of the amount of mana they have. Thus, in order to get their hands on this drug, everyone will bow down to them. Lunatiora, so when they killed every noble, a new world will be born. Sophie tiredly says no one would want that, so he angrily questions how someone with the amount of power she has could understand and pulls the lever. As she writhes in pain, he says the extraction process can be initiated after just a little more time, after which she'll be free to go despite being crippled. As Tamo watches from above, he says it'll be hard to get her out of there and that woman seems troublesome, so he should alert Master Wayne right away. Back at the mansion, he tells him that he's located Sophie and is located in an abandoned castle west of here. Wayne asks why she's in a place like that. He answers that a group called Lunatiora has her using her for some kind of human experiment. Wayne says time is of the essence and tells him to take him there immediately. As they're leaving, he tells Kijin to come with them, and as they're standing in front of the castle, Tamo says the castle is supposed to be abandoned with 3 floors, but both the front and back entrances have 10 people each guarding it. Moreover, each floor has at least 20 more magicians guarding them, and about 100 people are confined within an underground prison deep within which exists a laboratory, which is where they're holding Sophie, so he's planned a route that will alert the least amount of enemies, but Wayne declines and says he won't take that route. Tamo asks what he's saying. He answers that these guys will pay for messing with his domain. Taking out a paper seal, he summons Suzaku, Kaojin, Jembu, and Dain. He announces that they've already heard what he said and tells them to crush them, attack from the front, and beat them all up beyond recognition. All the Shikigami bow down and excitedly get ready to get going. At the front gate of the abandoned castle, A guard sees Wayne and the generals approaching the castle and tells them to stop since this place is off-limits for nobles such as themselves and to get lost, but Wayne keeps approaching, so he angrily asks if he's dead before getting slammed into the floor as Wayne menacingly tells him to not get in his way. The other guard alerts everyone that they're being attacked and surrounds them. The general says there's so many bad guys, so he tells Kojin to go ahead. He tells him to leave it to him and rushes at the guards before effortlessly defeating them in a second. As they enter the castle, he asks where the stairs leading down are. Tamo shows it to him before guards tell them to stop, so Wayne tells Diane and Suzaku to take care of them, hearing which the two remark that it's finally their time and say he can count on them. He says the rest of them will proceed underground before the woman from before slowly walks towards them and says she presumes they're a friend of Sophie's and are here to save her. Seeing her, Kijin says she's powerful and tells Wayne to leave it to her. He says he's counting on her and starts walking towards the stairs, but as he passes the woman, she angrily tells him to not think she'll let him slip past her, but her hand suddenly gets stopped. She asks Kijin what she did, who remarks that she didn't chant and seems to be a little better than an average magician. The woman asks if she said only a little, which Kijin agrees to, saying there's almost no difference from her point of view. The woman says she needs to do a higher dose in that case and injects herself with something, telling her that this drug is called Makia and is an experimental drug that enhances one's mana, a wonderful medicine that can make anyone superhuman. Seeing this, Kijin asks if the word she's looking for is monster, to which the woman says she's very rude and won't kill her right away since she'll take her time playing with her, though she might just go overboard and beat her to a pulp. Kijin replies that she luckily specializes in monster extermination and asks her to allow her to exorcise her. In the underground prison, Tamo tells Wayne that Sophie is held up in the room ahead. Wayne answers that he'll leave the magician guard standing there to him and tells Jembu to bring all the people confined here outside and heal anyone wounded here, in which both the generals leave. The guards stand in front of them and tell everyone to not let them pass this point, but Tamo easily slashes the main person in charge and says he wishes all of them weren't that boorish, while Jembu heals the disarmed humans, who gratefully thank her and say the pain is gone, calling her a saintess, hearing which she innocently wonders what that is. One of the guards rushes into the leader's room and says intruders have broken into the castle, to which he asks who he thinks he's talking to and tells him to go deal with them since he's busy. Alarmed, the guard says the enemy is running rampant all over the castle before falling down as Wayne enters from behind. The man remarks that it was him and assumes he's here to rescue Sophie, who tiredly calls out his name, hearing which he tells her that it's okay and that she did well. Holding out for this long, the man calls him naive and asks if he really thinks he's already won, but Wayne answers that he's the naive one and asks if he really thinks he stands a chance against him, since he won't be able to do anything because this is going to be a one-sided extermination. Suzaku and Diane easily finish up the guards and say this was a piece of cake, although Kijin's opponent seems strong, but she's their head god and will take care of her no matter what happens, since her unique skill is special after all. As the two are fighting, the woman asks Kijin what's wrong and repeats how Kijin had said she specializes in monster extermination, to which she inwardly remarks that the physical capabilities of her opponent far surpass her in every way. As Kijin jumps back after receiving a heavy blow, the woman gleefully remarks that she's trying to hide now, but it won't work since she can tell exactly where she is, and asks Suzaku and Diane if they're not going to join since she'll die soon if it keeps going like this. Before seeing the two goofing around and asking what they're doing, Suzaku remarks that they're playing since they finished their job, so she tells him to suit himself since she'll be coming for them both right after she's killed this one, but the two start laughing and tell her that there's no way she'll be able to beat Kijin and to get a grip on the power levels here, so the woman says she'll show them the reality of the situation. She rushes at Kijin, asking if they can't tell she's winning. Suddenly, Kijin says she's going to be the one who dies and instantly vanishes before slashing at her. She says she's completely analyzed her attacks, seeing which Diane remarks that her sword techniques are amazing as always and that the ability to turn back time is really unfair, before Kijin tells her that her skill is amazing as well, to which she asks her to trade if she thinks so. Kijin says she'll be a lot weaker even if they could trade. The 12 Heavenly Generals, the highest rank out of all Shikigami, each of the generals has a unique skill, and Kijin's moment's return allows her to send her enemy back in time by 0.1 seconds. These unique skills are the reason why the 12 generals are the strongest out of all the Shikigami. Kijin says she never thought she would have to use her unique skill and wonders if it's because of the things she injected herself, and maybe the reason behind Limiteoria conducting human experiments is to make the drug stronger, telling Wayne to be careful. He picks Sophie up and says she's safe now before handing her to Tamo and turning towards the man, who shows him Makia, a mana-amplifying drug that will give monstrous strength to whoever takes it and gives considerable power even as a prototype. But now that he's added Sophie's gene, it's finally complete, and they can finally produce the Awakened Ones, and will achieve a world where anyone weak or strong can be equal. Wayne says it's useless and has no place in the world he wants because his ideals are nothing more than self-satisfaction. The man replies that it's a pity, but he'll just have to kill him, turning into a giant creature after injecting himself. Wayne agrees that monstrous was an accurate way to call it since he really looks like one right now, as the man says this is really a suitable appearance for the king of the new world. Wayne replies that he's defeated all kinds of beasts and monsters in his previous life, so he'll be no different, and says it's time for an exorcism. The monster says it's interesting that he still thinks he can win after he's awakened, but that's actually impossible. It rushes at Wayne, who uses Spirit Blade and blocks the attack, as the monster remarks that he's hardened his skin so that sword won't even be able to scratch him, so he says they should put it to the test in that case and uses Flash Step and After Image Strike, after which the monster says the attack didn't hit him when it made contact, but the damage came afterwards, which means that this guy is using some techniques he's never seen before. It says it doesn't matter since he can't even use magic and enchains Wayne, who remarks that they're made of mana, so one has to use even more of it to defeat them. But since he has none, he'll get killed, however, if he uses spiritual power, which is the opposite of mana, and attacks the spell at its weakest point. He tells the monster to not think that it'll be so easy and slashes it, remarking that his sword cut him earlier, to which the man questions whether he injured him by focusing on a single spot and tells him to wait, saying he's never met someone who could compete with the Awakened One, and asks him to join Lunitioria so that they can build a new world together, but Wayne answers that he never works below anyone and his anger won't subside until he's taken him down. The man says that's a shame because he'll have to kill him right here and now in that case, and will use the true power of an Awakened One, turn to ash. He blows everything up and the castle starts crumbling down, so Wayne rises in the air and admits that really is some serious power, but it's useless if he can't hit him. As the monster sprouts wing and flies in front of him as well, he uses Spirit Shockwave and slams him down as it questions how long he's going to keep surpassing his expectations, and remarks that there's no way he can be stronger than an Awakened One like him. It deviously grins and puts up a barrier around him and announces that he'll use the full power of the Awakened One since Wayne can't go all out if he has to protect his comrades while summoning a blast. He says he doesn't even communicate about his comrades and tells Cajun and the others to do their best protecting the people with them so that he can get a little serious. He says his strongest technique is the same as before, Ultimate Spirit Flame. However, if he uses it alongside other Onmyojetsu, he can increase his power by a lot. He uses Black Flame Fusion, an attack that fuses black flame with blue flame that is enriched with spiritual power, which as it starts spinning out of control, can be particularly destructive. The monster says such thick flames are nothing for him and unleashes the blast, telling him to die before Wayne unleashes his at the same time. The two attacks collide before Wayne's spiritual power blasts through and attacks the monster that is unable to comprehend that he's losing before completely getting incinerated, as Wayne lands on the ground and says he'll organize him as promised, using purification. His life has been nothing but suffering. When he was young, his parents were murdered by a burglar. Since then, he dedicated his life to studying magic so that the same would not happen to him. Luckily, he found someone willing to sponsor him and became a scholar, even meeting the love of his life. However, that happiness crumbled to ashes in a single moment. His love was stolen by a noble. Owing to his low status, he could do nothing to protect her. He had little mana or talent for magic, but he used that as a tool to write revolutionary theses on magic. However, once he noticed his noble sponsor stole these achievements for himself, which changed him, so that nobody as unfortunate as him could ever be born again. He decided to build it, a world where the ones with low statuses can win over the strong. He will build a world of equality. In present day, Wayne says purification is an Onmyojetsu that allows him to experience the memories of the target and purify their soul. He says the man has so many thoughts stunted with revenge that his heart has been filled with darkness, making him stoop to evil. He says the man had his own reasons for justice, but he answers that he has committed sins too grave and justice doesn't exist for people like him. Before he had noticed, he had turned into the very person he once hated and was so driven by his goals that he failed to see his own faults and wants to repent for that. Wayne says his memories show that he really isn't a bad person and should come to his territory if he wants to repent for what he did. The man asks what he means, so he answers that there really isn't anything wrong with what he wanted. The only problem was how he went about it, so if he wants to try it in a better way, this time, he'll make his dream come true. The man tearfully thanks him and swears to give his everything, to which he answers that he looks forward to working with him. And so they succeeded in saving Sophie and destroying Lunitioria, all of whose members were arrested, and the Makia was all burned to ashes. Sophie, on the other hand, was healed by Jembu and is swiftly recovering, while the Alsara Knights took custody of all the imprisoned people and sent them back home. Saving them was a delightful experience for someone like him who was only used to saving the people he chose. As Kijin reads the newspaper where Wayne's stories were published and says his reputation is finally rising, he reads a letter from Count Norbert, thanking him and inviting him to their mansion, which he says isn't really a big thing because he only helped out a friend in need. Kijin says the fact that he was able to make one of the 7 great nobles indebted to him is really good for their weak land, which he agrees to and assumes that it'll be a few words of gratitude and a decent sum of rewards, which is what he thought, but the reality far surpassed his expectations. As he enters the mansion, he thanked Lord Norbert for the invitation, to which he'd said he's the one who's thankful, and after serving tea, said there's something he'd like to ask him before seriously questioning if he intends to marry Sophie in the future hearing, which he spits his drink out and asks if he questioned him on whether or not he wants to marry her, which Lord Norbert agrees to. Wayne apologizes for spewing his drink on him and says it was just a reflex action, to which the Lord answers that he has no intention of troubling him since he saved his daughter's life after all, which is why he's also sorry for surprising him like that. If he wasn't there to stop the kidnappers, the situation would not have ended well. His daughter would have died and the kingdom would have suffered immensely. His previous proposal was just something he came up with when thinking about how he could repay him for his deed, which is why he wants to ask once more if he intends to marry his daughter. Wayne asks if Sophie knows of this when the Lord answers that she doesn't. Wayne says he believes he shouldn't ask about something like that without consulting for his opinion first, which is why he'd like to refuse his offer for now. Moreover, she's like an important friend to him. Hearing this, he answers that he feels more reluctant to marry her off. She's going to be an amazing wife, and despite his bias because of being her father, he thinks she's a wonderful and graceful girl and is exceptionally kind, respecting everyone for their opinion. Once done, he asks Wayne if he's changed his mind, but he answers that he stands by what he said, after which the Lord decides to put a pin on it for now and won't discuss it anymore. He says he'll have to think of a different way to pay him back if he can't get him to join his family, thus he'll hand over a part of the Norbert family's territory to the Granado family. Wayne might find it in bad taste, but he looked into the Granado family's background and expresses his condolences for his father, but at least Wayne managed to banish his 2 foolish brothers. Wayne says that would honestly be a big help, so he'll take full advantage of it in that case. He remarks that there's a part of land he actually likes and would like the one surrounding Culbut village, which is close to Granado territory. The Lord says that area is barely developed, but realizes that he's after the mineral deposits. He answers that although it's true that it's a region blessed with minerals, he was actually drawn towards it by the land itself and couldn't help but think that it has all the resources his land doesn't. The Lord answers that he doesn't know of anything valuable being there and warns him that it's very hard to develop, to which he answers that he knows, so the Lord says he'll transfer Culbut village and the areas surrounding it to his name and thanks him for saving his daughter. Wayne says he'd like to meet Sophie and goes to meet her. As Sophie is embarrassingly fantasizing about him, she opens the door to have a brief conversation with him before suddenly catching herself and closing the door, making him think he did right by rejecting the offer. He later returns to Granado territory and meets with Rikagu, who he tells that he wants to mobilize all the 12 generals to do some rapid development in Granado territory. Rikagu says developing the Granado territory is a good idea, so he has no objections, after which Wayne decides to summon everyone and give them the instructions. As the generals appear, he says he now has barely enough spiritual power to maintain them all, so they should expect to be summoned all the time from now on. Suddenly, a general jumps down on him from above, saying it's been a long time, but another general blocks the kick and tells the Shikigami Tuda to not be disrespectful of Master Wayne. Tuda tells him to not get in his way, seeing which Wayne remarks that he's still the troublesome child he once was, to which Tuda says that's just how he is. Wayne promises to fight him another time and tells him to behave for now or else he'll cancel his summon. The other generals cheerfully remark that it's like they're back to the good old days before Wayne decides to immediately give them their orders. He says they're going to be making some big improvements to the Granado territory, explaining that there's a reason why it's regarded as the smallest and weakest land in Al-Sura. Their population, military, and economy are all below the norms. These are the first ones he wants to improve. Kijin will continue supporting him in the academy, and Rikhu will manage the territory. Tamo is in charge of the management and housework of the villa. Tenkyu will gather information on the subjects. Kaochin will work as an instructor in the training grounds so that they can improve the soldier skills. Siryu will establish and manage a merchant company, being assisted by Tenkyu. Jembo will set up a temporary hospital at the church and heal anyone injured or wounded, which leaves Suzaku, Dain, Tuda, and Bayaka, who will be in charge of developing the new territory. Diane asks about what they should do for developing the new territory, since she doesn't have any idea, although he has high expectations. Sugi answers that she just has to get along with the locals, since the people of Culbut village have now become his subjects. They probably don't feel too great about it, so he should do something as their new lord. Once he's explained what he wants, Siri remarks that if his plan succeeds, the company she starts will come in handy, which he agrees to, and says that's the reason he asked her to start one. Toda asks Wayne if he'll fight him if he goes wild there, but he answers the reason why he's with Byako and Suzaku is because they won't let him do that, and tells the two that he's counting on them hearing, which he says it won't be boring at the very least. Diane asks why she's with them, so he answers that it's because she's innocent and cute, making it so people will easily take a liking to her. Once that's done, he says he'll be counting on them all and leaves for the academy, where some girls seem to recognize him, seeing which he realizes that word of Sophie's rescue has probably gotten out, which isn't a problem, but all the students looking at him like that makes him a little uncomfortable. He heads to the classroom and asks Sophie if she's fine now, which she agrees to, and apologizes for acting like that when he came to visit her, but he tells her to not worry about that. The teacher arrives and tells them to take their seats so that the magical studies class can start, and tells the students who use Omujutsu to not get in the way of others. Sophie objects to what the teacher said, as Wayne remarks that this might turn out to be a troublesome class. The teacher tells them that magic is ranked in order from 1st to 7th rank. Right now, the students can only use low-level spells, ranging from levels 4 to 7, but from now on, they will be taught high-ranking spells that are from levels 3 to 1. The only person capable of casting the vast majority of first-rank spells is the headmaster, Ralo Vistov. Learning them is certainly very difficult, but he'd like to believe that everyone here will be able to learn at least a 3rd-rank spell, which will be considered high rank. Although there are some in the class who are unable to perform the most fundamental spells from the lowest ranks. He starts checking everyone's mana levels and tells a student that his mana is of the water attribute and is good for assistance but lacks in the amount. After a few more students, Sophie steps forward after the teacher remarks that the quality of the students this year is really low, but that's probably why a chump without mana could take the top spot. Sophie tells him that despite what he says, Wayne is much more powerful than both him and her before she puts her hand on the orb, and all the students remark in surprise that she's definitely the most impressive one so far, while Wayne says her talent still lies in the sword. The teacher compliments her large amount of mana and says she's definitely a talented student, which she thanks him for, and says the only reason she can output this much is because of Wayne, since he identified what was wrong and immediately fixed it, which the teacher inwardly remarks is an obvious lie because the mana organ is not so easily manipulated and it's impossible no matter who it is. He waves forward for the next person, and seeing Kijin annoyingly remarks that she's Wayne's attendant and is obviously going to flop. Kijin asks Wayne how much mana she should pour into it. Surprised, he asks if she has mana, so she answers that she has a fair amount of it, to which he says he didn't expect that and tells her to pour as much as she has without exceeding Sophie. The teacher asks what's wrong and if she can't do it, remarking that he should have known before Kijin puts her hand on the orb, and seeing the powerful reaction, everyone remarks that she's as strong as Sophie and might even be better, which Sophie warmly accepts and says that's to be expected. After this, the teacher calls Wayne and remarks that he's finally here and is the entire reason why he's holding this test, since that'll expose how useless he is and will show his true colors. Wayne wonders what he should do since he knows how it'll turn out because of him not having any mana, and if the results will change if he pours spiritual power inside. He tries doing so, but nothing happens, to which the teacher says it's completely useless and calls him a nuisance for the entire class before something dark starts curling around the orb. Wayne decides to try pouring in some more, but the orb shatters as soon as he's done so. This leaves the entire class speechless before he apologizes to the teacher and remarks that these orbs are quite fragile. The teacher says nobody has ever had enough mana to break this orb, but all the students start praising him for his strength, which Sophie happily sees as a worn-out student says it's his turn next, and that Wayne really had to go and cause trouble with the teacher. While leaving the teacher, Korn angrily says he destroyed a mana orb and that this is exactly why he hates manaless idiots. He tells Henry to come test his mana, so he timidly steps forward but stops his hand over the orb. The teacher asks what's wrong and if this is the best he can do, before remarking that he's never seen such a hopeless in all of his years at the academy and wouldn't have thought that there'd be someone even more worthless than Wayne, so Henry slowly walks away, seeing which the other students awkwardly remark that he got humiliated for nothing, but Wayne remarks that he was made fun of just because he had a little mana, but must have some other talents to be able to pass the entrance exam, which means that he must be exceptionally talented in areas other than magic, before Korin tells them that their time has run out because of a certain student who destroyed the mana orbs and that they're going to end it here for today. He informs them that their next lesson will be practical magic training, where they'll be split into groups of 2 and will have to find the goal in the middle of the forest where they have set traps and let monsters loose, which is why he'll explain everything in detail next week, but they can start looking for their partners from now. The students mutter that practical training is supposed to be really hard, and all the girls try to get Sophie to partner up with them to have someone strong on their team, to which she asks them to give her some time, inwardly remarking that she can't ask Wayne to partner up with her. Kijin asks Wayne what they're going to do about this activity, to which he answers that Henry, who dejectedly leaves the class, has caught his eye. Wayne decides that now's a good time to talk to him. In the cafeteria, Henry tells himself that no one will want to pair up with him after seeing how little mana he has and wonders why he decided to come to this school before Wayne asks if he can sit next to him, which he nervously agrees to. Wayne remarks that he was thinking that they had similar circumstances since both of them are incompetent in magic, but still passed the entrance exam, meaning they were both admitted due to their talent rather than magic. Henry says he actually knows a lot about magic, which probably got him in, but power is everything in this academy, which Wayne agrees to and asks if there's anything he's particularly good at, to which Henry answers that he really likes making magic tools and applied to this academy, thinking it could polish his skills, but it's a lot tougher than he thought. Wayne says he should come to his mansion after school in that case, so they could have special training for the class next week, telling him that he could just invent his own kind of magic if he doesn't have a lot of mana. After school, Wayne manages to perform a really weak spell, seeing which Wayne remarks that he can use spells without chanting, which is a very difficult technique that requires a high level of both magic knowledge and mana control. Even in the academy, there aren't that many people who can do it, which is why he'll be able to put it in practice in many ways with such a strong foundation. Wayne instructs him on a way to do it using less mana, saying they're just testing something, and when Henry tries it out, the attack surprisingly becomes stronger. Henry questions why this happened when he used less mana, to which Wayne explains that it's because it made him use the spell more effectively, but Henry seems confused and asks for a bit more detail, so he says that it looks like everyone in this world only thinks of casting spells one way, and even when they sometimes shorten or omit the chant, they always perform the spell through the same process, which was true for him as well. If he hadn't changed the method, he could only casted spells that required large amounts of mana to use, but upon switching the method, he was able to fire powerful spells despite his small mana pool. Henry realizes what he means before Wayne tells him that he's developed excellent mana control from working with magic tools for so long, so he thought that Henry would be able to do it, which is why he wanted him to try it out. Henry excitedly praises him for this, saying he would have never thought of that, and that this idea will shake the whole world's concept of magic, to which Wayne answers that it's probably because he's someone who can even use magic and didn't develop the preconceived notions everyone had for magic. He asks Henry if he thinks people will treat him more kindly from now on, to which he thanks Wayne and says he'll be able to manage somehow because of him, but Wayne says he only gave the idea, so Henry was the one who succeeded in it. Henry says no one has ever praised him in the academy, and that he's overjoyed. Before Wayne asks if he has a partner for his practical training, he answers that he hasn't gotten one yet, after which Wayne asks him to team up with him. He says he will be happy in partnering up with him too, but asks if that's fine since he might only slow him down, but Wayne declines this, telling him that that's not true and that they're going to ace that practical training together and leave Corin speechless, hearing she calls him amazing to be able to think of something like that, to which Wayne answers that it's probably the fact that people mocking him rubs him the wrong way before the two decide to partner together and shake hands. 1 week later, on the day of the practical training, Corin shows the students a crystal and says their task is to collect one of these from the mountain and bring it here, but those who aren't here by sunset would fail, before telling them to act with extreme caution since they can expect many monsters and traps there. Getting ready to signal them to start, he notices Wayne and Henry, remarking that 2 failures have decided to pair together and saying he'll let them go first as a show of pity. He instructs them to not bother the group behind them and to climb the mountain without getting in others' way, which Wayne warmly agrees to and tells Henry to move at his own pace since he'll match it. Henry tells himself that it'll be alright because he's practiced so hard the entire last week and won't be made fun of anymore. As they start, he swiftly rushes through the forest, seeing which Wayne remarks that he did it, and that his mana control really is something. Corin looks at the two in shock, while Keegan appreciatively says that's expected of Master Wayne, and Sophie remarks that Henry wasn't able to use magic at that level before and was the same as her, but Wayne really is amazing at helping people grow, while Corin angrily wonders what the hell those two did.